Nathaniel's fingers trembled as his callous hands gripped the shovel handle. Its rusty edge plunged into the earth beneath him. The graveyard was bathed in an eerie fog. An orange glow from the gas lamp cast long, twisted shadows along the cast-iron gates and the cracked headstones. He tried not to look at the name etched into the gravestone below him. Eliza Wilkins, beloved wife. It had been 5 years since she passed, leaving him a widower at the tender age of 32. The pain still felt like a gaping, open wound. In her absence, addiction had taken hold. Nathaniel wished he'd been a stronger man, but the stable reflection of his past had shattered soon after his beloved's death. His money dried up, along with any job prospects in this forsaken town. Nathaniel had resorted to robbing the graves of the wealthy, prying jewelry from brittle dead hands and selling it to those who would buy it in the seedy underbelly of this town. At first, he wasn't caught up in a moral dilemma, robbing only the most nefarious dead. Corrupt politicians, crime bosses, other known deviants. But those plots had long since been cleaned out. The black markets didn't pay what his plunder was worth, nor did it cover the expenses of his living and his ever-growing addiction. Now his shovel scraped against the hollowed ground where his beloved Eliza rested. "Forgive me," he whispered, as he took a swig from his flask and dove the blade of his shovel into the soil. To both his relief and his dismay, the earth was softer than he expected. With haste, he uncovered the top of the casket. It sat, staring at him in the moonlight. The orange glow of the gas lamps flickered off of it and shimmered in the pools of tears that welled in his eyes. Warm streaks formed on his dirt-covered cheeks. The casket lid creaked open with an ominous, rusty groan. Nathaniel's heart pounded, dreading yet yearning to see her face one more time. To his surprise, she was far more intact than he would have ever imagined. What he thought would have been the skeletal remains of his wife's corpse were instead much more preserved, still decayed and mangled from the passage of time, but still very much intact as well. Again, he quenched his thirst from the flask. More tears streamed down his cheeks as he reached down to remove Eliza's wedding ring. The ring he'd bought in what felt like a different life. Something began to move underneath her burial dress. Startled, he pulled his hand back, ready to strike whatever creature emerged from the fabric. A low, gurgling moan left Eliza's lips, and her milky, accusing eyes shot open. Maggots squirmed from the cavities on her face, and her jaw creaked open as her moaning intensified. She sat up and began to twist and contort. Then he heard flesh tearing and saw a gush of black fluid pour from the bottom of her dress. Some abominable spawn slithered from Eliza. It convulsed and unfurled in a burst of grotesque afterbirth. This thing was both human and insectile. It held the shape of an infant, but had more blinking eyes covering the front of its face. Thin, Wiggling tendrils fell from its mucousy orifice of a mouth and flopped against the wood of the casket like a fish out of water. Coarse hair, still covered in the vile afterbirth, wiggled and shifted on its skin. All of its eyes darted in different directions, frantically seeming to search for something unseen. Its darting eyes stopped and locked onto Nathaniel all at once. His mouth, agape in horror, quickly filled with several writhing tendrils that fell from the mouth of the infant creature. An intense breath left him as the memories of his past grave desecrations came rushing back in kaleidoscopic shards. Tendrils went deeper into him. For a brief moment, the creature was beautiful. It was as if he was seeing visions from beyond the veil of mortality, projected by an eldritch being plucked from the most unimaginable abyss. Everything went black. Then again, he was shown a flowing collage of his past defilements, of sacred resting places. Each one of his memories came back all at once, as if he were looking through the many eyes of the creature itself. Nathaniel thought the creature was a blasphemy against the cycle of life and death, as were his many misdeeds. A profound disgust churned within him as he finally understood the full consequences of his actions. He had exploited the hallowed ground for its resources. Each tombstone marked a lifetime of experience, personality, and memories that he had sullied. These resting places were meant to guide those who passed through the ether like the setting sun or the changing of the seasons. What Nathaniel had done was an affront to nature itself, an insult to the natural order of life and death. Guilt washed over him as he realized the torment of the restless spirits he had left in his wake. The tormented souls he'd disturbed were now bound to the mortal plane, lingering, restless. Something snapped inside him. The visions in Nathaniel's mind froze and then shattered like stained glass windows being pelted by stones. He felt the twitching tendrils slide from his throat and out his mouth. As his sight returned, Nathaniel saw finger-sized larvae emerging from the dirt around him. Fat, bloated grubs. They were covered in a green, glowing mucus that mingled with the light of his gas lamp. Eliza was still moaning loudly, and the creature that came from her seemed to be gasping for air. Many more larvae began to fall from the dirt walls all around him, piling in and all around the casket. They reeked of decay, and Nathaniel almost choked on his vomit. He watched in revulsion and fascination as they began to burrow into Eliza. They became a blanket of undulating flesh, writhing in the gloom of the moonlight and the gas lamps, and soon they would be upon him. Nathaniel quickly grabbed onto the dangling roots and used protruding stones as footholds as he climbed from the grave. Some of the larvae had attached themselves to his dirt-covered pants, and he flailed his legs violently as he pulled himself out of the hole. Horror gripped him, but he also battled with the lingering guilt of the visions he had been shown. More warm, salty paths appeared on his grime-covered cheeks as he scrambled to his feet. He looked back and saw Eliza peeking over the edge of her grave, covered in a wriggling blanket of glowing grubs. She screamed, and Nathaniel started to run. He fled blindly into the night, Eliza's voice echoing through the graveyard, and the shrieks of the spirits he had disturbed reverberated through his mind. He ran until he could run no longer, finally collapsing by a gnarled oak tree in a park on the outskirts of town. Huddled beneath the twisted branches, he wept. The sun's first rays came over the horizon, and the warm light hit his face. His nightmare of an evening had come to an end. The cycle of night and day continued. Rays of sun shot between the planks of a small fence on the perimeter of the park. They made straight lines of light on the grass around him. Then he realized time moves just like the light, in a straight line. He couldn't change the things that he had done, but Nathaniel knew what he must do. He would become a gravekeeper and work to restore and maintain the sacred spaces he had desecrated. The branches of the oak tree in front of him swayed in the morning breeze. He reached out and touched the tree's trunk. In death, all things reunite as equals under the bark of mortality's great tree. Each branch a life, each leaf a soul. You're still here. Thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague here. Always a pleasure to see all my new and old viewers coming by for another one of my spooky tales. If you'd like to support the show, you can always take part in one of our channel offers through Fume or Aura, or you can just click on another video when they come up. I'd really appreciate it. For our newer viewers, we also have lots of playlists and other things if you'd like to get caught up. I know some of my series have been going on for quite a while. If you'd like to get my latest book, there's a link down below that'll take you to my Amazon page. Towesey Homestead just came out, so if that's something you'd like to get your hands on, go ahead and have a look down there. If you'd like a signed copy, you can go ahead and email me from my email address on the site, and I'll get with you about shipping information and ship you a signed copy. If you'd like to support the channel in a more monetary fashion, we also have membership through YouTube, and we've got a Patreon that you can get the information for in the description. We have lots of tiers and everything to suit your needs. Patrons that support on the $10 tier, that's our Ghostly Reader tier, get a book anytime I write one, signed and on their doorstep. As you may have noticed, there's a list of patrons and members on the screen, and I'd like to personally thank every one of them for taking a hand in the future of this channel. Well, that's enough for tonight. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.